Welcome back to Behind the Seal, the official podcast of the Missouri Secretary of State Office. This is actually Elizabeth and my last podcast for the summer because our internships are ending, which is sad.
Yeah.
But so last week we talked with the Commissioner O'Donnell about the Securities Division, and today we're going to get a little more in-depth and talk about the enforcement section of it with Doug Jacoby. So he's here to give us all his knowledge on that. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Could you just walk us through your career path? What made you end up here as the Director of Enforcement?
Yeah, so I've been working in New York in the securities industry for roughly around 30 years.
Wow.
Both in teaching the exams, working as a broker. I did go to law school and then transitioned to an in-house counsel for some large firms up in New York, like UBS and Citigroup and Lehman Brothers in the day. And so along my path, I met people that I worked with, both in the legal and compliance departments at my large firms, who had spent a lot of time as regulators prior to coming into the industry. But I think, you know, when I graduated from undergrad, I went right into brokerage right out of school. I went and got a graduate degree as well, but went right into the business. And then when I graduated from law school, I was hired immediately out of school by UBS. So given that trajectory, I never had the opportunity to work as a regulator. So during a certain part of my career, I decided to kind of go back and get that regulatory experience. I spent 2 years down in the DC area working for FINRA, and now I've been here for 5.
Awesome.
So I guess getting more into securities enforcement, what does that mean within the Missouri Secretary of State Office? Like, what all do you guys do down there?
So the entire securities division is divided up into 3 different sections. We have registration, we have examinations, and we have an enforcement section. Right now, I'm the director of enforcement, so what I do on a daily basis is just manage the process back in that one particular section.
So what does the enforcement section entail?
So when people are victimized in the process of buying or selling securities, they're able to complain with the office here at the Secretary of State's office. They can do it by the website. They can write a letter in. They can send us an email. And tell us about their experience. And we have a staff back in enforcement who will take in that complaint. We read through the complaint and we do a superficial investigation of the complaint to find out its veracity, and also to find out if we have jurisdiction, because a lot of people will send in complaints about topics that don't come under our jurisdiction, and we don't pursue that. We follow up with a letter that says, hey, it's beyond our jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. You'll have to call an outside counsel to deal with that on your own. But with the complaints that we pursue, we have an investigations team that launches a formal investigation, and through requests for information or the subpoena power that we have, we gather documents, we take testimony from people who are involved in this orbit in which the kind of alleged fraud or whatever happened in the complaint, we can investigate. We can collect the evidence to identify who's responsible, what type of security it was, and what exactly the violations are. And so with these complaints, we only prosecute people or organizations that are responsible for these violations, and they have to specifically be violations of the Missouri Securities Act. So that's our base.
Where can you find the Securities Act, just in case people are curious?
So you can go online. You can go to the Secretary of State's site. You can also just type in Google Missouri Securities Act, and you'll see a number of links come up. And, you know, depending on which link you hit, it might be easy to use. One may be more difficult to navigate, but it's widely available out there.
Okay.
But just to be clear, it's like there's a lot of laws and regulations that govern securities coast to coast in this country. The rules of the SEC. We've got the rules of FINRA. We've also got, 49 other states who have their own particular securities laws and rules. So we're only going after people who specifically engage in conduct or activities that violate our specific statute. But the key is it doesn't have to be somebody logistically here in Missouri. We can go after people who are in other parts of the country who have reached into Missouri and defrauded somebody who is a resident here.
Yeah, which is probably such an important thing to be able to do, because we need to be able to hold people accountable and, invest not just through the Securities Division, be educating and stuff, but actually truly trying to fix and change the fraud that could be happening. So I think that's cool.
Well, it's a great resource to have our group, the enforcement section that is within the division, because there are sometimes cases where the people who are complaining don't have an option to complain with anybody else. They don't have a case that a local prosecutor will take. It's not large enough, or there's not a large enough amount of money that is at issue in the case for somebody like the FBI or the Attorney General's office to take. And maybe the people, in a case of being defrauded out of their money, have lost everything and they don't have the funds to hire an attorney. So it is good, if the case kind of fits the profile of cases that we do pursue, that they have us kind of as almost a last resort to go after the people who defrauded them and try to reclaim some of the lost funds back to them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
I guess kind of bringing it back to people who call and their case is not necessarily something that you guys deal with. Are there a lot of common misunderstandings with what the enforcement division does here?
Yeah, a lot of complaints that don't really fit our jurisdiction. People complain about fights among family members with respect to inheritance. We're not, we don't get involved in wills, trust, and estate type issues here. People, although they complain, we normally tell them that they have to go find an actual private attorney to handle a family matter like that. There are cases that go well beyond our jurisdiction, like crypto. Crypto on its own is not technically a security anywhere in the country. Both Bitcoin and Ether are designated as commodities, I believe, by the CFTC. But here in Missouri, it's neither right now. And so in the fashion that we've seen in the complaints we receive, it's not necessarily that people get defrauded by buying the actual coin that you read about or see in magazines. They get defrauded because they latch on to a fraudulent website that says, send us your money and invest in Bitcoin. But behind the website, the people just took the money. There was no investment made. So those types of frauds can be coming from halfway around the world, and we certainly don't have the resources to investigate something like that, nor do we have the jurisdiction to go into other countries.
Right.
So we usually will refer that out to the Department of Justice or the CFTC or other federal authorities to handle.
As in Director of Enforcement, what are your main responsibilities kind of day to day, and how does that differ from other roles in the Securities Division?
Yeah, so with the three sections, there's registration examinations in the enforcement section. So with respect to our day-to-day back in enforcement, my job as the director of enforcement is to manage everybody back in enforcement. So we have a team of investigators, we'll have a team of lawyers, we have a paralegal, and all of us kind of work in tandem to process the complaints to an investigation, to work the investigations, to hand over to the lawyers, and then the lawyers write up the complaint or the petition to file against certain people and organizations who have violated the Missouri Securities Act. We file that down the hall with the commissioner, who will then sign an order, and away we go. And we're now heading towards a hearing.
Right.
But our day-to-day is pretty much kind of trying to run that process. There's never a day that goes by that we don't get complaints. So first we have to sort out the complaints we want to pursue and the complaints we want to dismiss. And then we have to pay attention to collecting the evidence on the investigations that we pursue. All of that takes a lot of time. We have a docket at any one time about maybe 25 cases overall. So there's a lot of cases moving forward at the same time, and it takes a team to do that in a proper way.
Interesting.
So how does the securities enforcement section affect just day-to-day Missourians?
Well, again, we're always here if people do have a complaint. Not everything falls within our jurisdiction, but it's an avenue that people can go online. They can file a complaint to us. They can see if we'll take their case. If they've tried to have their case get picked up by maybe a federal regulator who may have dismissed it. But we're always here to help them out. One other thing that we do for people as well, we have had people call in and say they do business with a large, well-known mutual fund. And they feel as though that mutual fund has locked them out of their account because they've tried to access it online. We've tried to help out in those situations. We reach out to the firm itself. We try to get a hold of the relevant person at that firm and then give them the contact information of the Missouri resident to put the two parties together to kind of resolve their problem. So when people do have not a complaint at issue, but they do have an issue with the firm or their brokerage account or their advisory account, we can sometimes assist with that as well.
Is that pretty similar to what other states do? How does Missouri's, way of going about this differ from other states?
I think we're all pretty similar across the country. We're all our state laws and regulations are founded on the same base set of laws, but I think over time we've all amended and modified our laws and regulations so that no state is exactly the same. But I think by and large, as I meet my compatriots in other states, we pretty much are doing the exact same thing. Yeah, you look at a state like New York or a state like California, they've just got a larger docket. They have a huge staff. Far more than a state like Missouri, and therefore they're just doing a lot more things and maybe different things than us because we're getting a different type of complaint maybe than they get.
That makes sense that there would be different complaints in bigger states and smaller states and just geographically. Okay, so from an enforcement perspective, why is the registration process and education process and everything else in the securities making sure that the industry professionals are knowledgeable so critical?
Yeah, so you mean how the other two sections kind of work in tandem? Yeah, so one of the major things that's important is that our office as a division knows who's doing brokerage business and advisory business in Missouri, whether they're logistically working from Missouri or outside of Missouri and reaching in. So for anybody who's going to do brokerage business, whether it's the firm or it's individuals working at the firm who are going to be salespeople who are directly in contact with clients, managing their money or doing the trading in their accounts, or it's the advisor, the firm itself, or the advisor reps who are working for the firm doing the same thing on the advisory side, we need to know who's in that space. So we require people to be licensed. We require people to get registered with us and just kind of as notice and say, hey, listen, I'm going to be in Missouri, whether I'm reaching in or from Missouri, I'm going to be doing business as an advisor or I'm going to be doing business as a broker. So we know how many people are in this state or from out of state reaching into Missouri doing these types of businesses. Once they're registered, The other section, the examination section, will periodically go into some of these firms and give them an examination to see how compliant they are with Missouri's laws and regulations. So to keep everybody who is operating as an advisor or a broker compliant, so that there is no customer harm as a result of the way they do their business, we have the examinations team that performs these cycle examinations or routine examinations with these firms over the year to ensure that everybody's operating in a way that's compliant with our laws and regulations, to ensure that there's no customer harm happening. And of course, when customer harm kind of arises, that's when somebody down in exam or somebody in registration will refer a case down the hallway to enforcement. For pursuing. Yeah.
Is if someone's being harmed in
Yes.
the public. Yeah. Which is kind of the whole point of the office.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about securities, enforcement?
I think we got a great staff, and I think we do some good work. We've made a lot of changes to the way that enforcement does its business in order to kind of make our area, our section, very effective and efficient, or as effective and efficient as it can be given the limited authority that we have from legislation. Again, I would just suggest if there's people out there who believe that they have been defrauded and they're really not sure where to go to try to find some recompense for the money that they've lost, you're always welcome to file a complaint with the Secretary of State's office here, specifically with the Securities Division, and the enforcement section will take a look at it and see if it's a case we want to pursue.
Right, and even if they can't pursue it, they might have advice on where to go or what to do.
Yeah, and one of the last things is just to mention that if we don't take a case, we always look for an opportunity to refer it somewhere else. So we may refer it to another state. We can refer to a federal authority like the FBI. We can refer to the SEC. We can refer it to FINRA. So we can even refer it over to the AG's office. So it doesn't just stop with us. We also have a lot of contacts and can refer that complaint elsewhere where it actually might get legs and pursued.
Yeah, which I think is helpful for people to know for sure. Well, thank you everyone for coming to this episode of Behind the Seal. Sadly, it's mine and Paige's last one together. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.